Our next section here is what we call.
This is going to be a good one. Calling out these damn sites with their projections.
Exactly. These BS site rankings. All of you have played fantasy baseball on probably all of these sites in your lifetime. I know I personally have, and Rich and Justin has as well. And as we get into this, there's one site in particular that's horrible with its rankings within the draft room. The other two are not great, but they're better than the third. Segment is for you, the listener. So when you go through your draft, you can look at where these players are ranked. And because they're ranked where they're at, a lot of your opponents that you're in the draft with might be valuing them much higher than they should be because they're on the list, or they're ranked higher or lower than they should. So understanding some of these players and where they're ranked at on the in the draft rooms would be key for you to maximize your team in these drafts, because regardless of however many sites that you go to rank players and all the homework that you do, the rankings in the site draft room itself has a lot of impact on the overall draft itself.
One thing before we get into Justin's BS rankings, you know, CBS has always been notorious for being terrible with their rankings, but I really feel like when I was looking over this year that they've stepped up. Their whole fantasy program has gotten better. If you look at their content and you look at their information, I feel like when I first started out back, say in the 2000s, their fantasy content was really good, and then there was a drop off where ESPN and then other sites took over, Fangraphs, Fantrax, and I really feel like their information, their product's gotten better. What do you think, Justin?
Yeah, I think during season content is pretty good, but specifically to what Aaron's talking about, the draft room. When you go to the draft room right now and look at the rankings, they're horrible. I mean, they don't even match the rankings on the main site, so it doesn't make any sense. They need to get some synchronization going on there, but the overall rankings aren't bad, but overall offenses versus each individual, pro that they have on there. But I've always liked the in-season stuff. I think it's really, really good.
Yeah, when you watch their videos or their sections, read some of their articles, it's usually pretty good. However, like I said, CBS's draft room rankings are horrible. There's always, I would say, up to 25% of their players that are misranked at least by 10 spots or more. And like I said, we'll go through some of these right here, and we'll point out some of these where the rankings are just out of whack. So go ahead and start us off there, Justin.
Okay, so I'm going to throw a curveball here, and I apologize because I didn't really clarify when I gave my information to you. But I have Garrett Cole on here because for all the listeners, we were going to do this segment last week, and we ended up running out of time. And at that time, when I gave this list to Aaron, CBS was two. I should have got a screenshot, but I didn't. There were three other main writers. I forget the other guy's name, but Scott White, Frank Stampfel, and Chris Towers. None of them had Garrett Cole even on their list at all. He was totally excluded from their list. So when you looked at their list, no Garrett Cole. I'm like, what the hell? So it's almost like the player pool that they got somehow excluded Cole, and they just forgot about him because he was nowhere to be found. And for anybody that would have been using those rankings,
that's weird.
Yeah, it was really weird. But I did look a few days ago, and they are updated. So he's in there now. So I don't want to talk about Garrett Cole on right now. I just wanted to point that out. Instead, I'm going to talk about Michael Conferto. So when I did look to see if Cole was still excluded from their overall rankings, I noticed that Scott White had Conferto at 102, and to me that's crazy. That's way too low. Some of the guys that he's got ahead of him are, Will Myers, Dominic Smith, Carlos Correa, Charlie Blackmon, and there's no way I'm taking any of those guys over Conferto, a guy who has performed well for three straight years now, and is like you all know, he's a solid keeper in the NL only league. So, what are your all thoughts on that?
I love me some Conforto. Conforto has been one of my keepers in our keeper league. I think he's really just coming into his own. He's a 30-plus home run hitter. I got to go to Atlanta back in 2019 when you go to ball games. Sat out in right field. He's a Greek god. If you look at him, he has the V-shaped taper. He's about 6'3". He has good game face. He looks like you want to look as a baseball player. So I love me some Conforto. He should be ranked higher. I totally agree.
Yeah, I got him. Looking at my overall hitter only rankings, I got him in my top 40 easily. So 109 overall to me is just too low. And he's got too many guys ahead of him that shouldn't be.
Yeah, I agree. Conferto is probably in everybody's top 50 for sure.
All right, so let's move on to the next one. And looking at those same guys, so my next one is Chris Paddock. So looking at those same two guys, Scott White and Frank Stample, they have Chris Paddock at 46 and 47. Last year was not a good year for him at all. Even the year before when he came up, did not perform to what we thought he would, because this is a guy who pretty much dominated the minor leagues. His average draft position is well over 100. And, so they got him 50 plus spots higher than his ADP. And they got guys like, they got him ahead of guys like Patrick Corbin, Sandy Alcantara, Pablo Lopez, Charlie Morton, and at this point, I wouldn't take Paddock over any of those guys. What are your thoughts on that?
I have to agree with that. I would probably rank Paddock around pick 100. He did have a horrible year. He did come on like gangbusters in 2019, and he looked unstoppable. But last year, he totally fell on his face, and he was more of a back of the rotation guy than a front of the rotation guy. And I think that's pretty much, until he proves otherwise, you'd have to assume that's the case for 2021.
I agree. I think even coming out of 2019, I really liked him going into 2020. I wouldn't have ranked him this high. He's a two-pitch pitcher. A lot of it's based on his fastball. Supposedly, he lost his fastball last year trying to come up with a good curveball and change his arm slot, and that's something he's working to get back this offseason. But I agree, he should be in the 100s, 120 rank. Somewhere around there is where you should be looking at Chris Paddock. I totally agree with you, Justin. He's not the number 151 player. There's lots of better pitchers out there.
Who else you got?
Okay, so I guess I should have clarified. I think I did, but those were for CBS. Oh, yeah, you got it there on the list. So let's move over to ESPN. So my first one here is going to be Eddie Rosario. Things have changed a little bit because he did finally sign with the Indians a few days ago. But you look at ESPN, they have him at 59 overall and the 19th outfielder. And like I said, when he still didn't have a team, it was even more exuberant. But now that he signed with Indians, I think it helps him a little bit. But they still have him ahead of guys like JD Martinez, Tommy Pham, even Nick Castellanos. I'm not sure at this point if I would if I would take him that high at 59 overall. What do you guys think about Rosario there at 59 overall?
Eddie Rosario, Justin, I agree he's ranked a little bit too high, but you're down on the player that you shouldn't be down on. He's a 25 to 30 home run guy. He's going to get your runs and RBIs. I think if you look at 2019, he was over 100 in RBIs. He's going to that Indians lineup. He's going to bat third, fourth, or fifth for the Indians. Now, the Indians are not going to be very good, but if you look, he's going to bat at the top of the lineup. They're going to have Cesar Hernandez batting 1. Batting 2, they're going to have Jose Ramirez, and then he's either going to bat third or fourth. So I like him. He doesn't give you a lot of speed. His batting average has been pretty consistently good. I agree he's probably a little bit too high. Should be around 110, 100 to 110, but I like the player.
Yeah, remember, I'm not knocking the guy at all. I like Rosario. I just don't like him at 59 overall. There's no way. Again, it was those rankings was a little more head scratching when he was still a free agent. But now that you're right, he signed with the Indians. He'll be batting, top of the lineup, even though they're not great. It's a little more comforting knowing he's got a team. But there's no way I'm taking him at 59 overall. Aaron, what do you think about Rosario?
So here's his 2019 numbers: 32 home runs, 276 batting average, 300 on base percentage, 86 strikeouts, and 562 at bats. Those aren't bad numbers. 109 RBIs. He could take a few more walks, get on base a little bit more, but that's 30 home runs and 276 batting average isn't bad. 56 ranked is probably a little bit too high, but I think he's more along the ranks of 84 or so.
He gets knocked for he's not a good defensive player. He's not a good on base percentage guy. He's up there to hit, but from fantasy perspective, he does a good job. But I totally agree with you, Justin. He doesn't deserve to be ranked that high.
All right, so the next one here is Yuli Guriel. When I looked, his overall ADP on ESPN was 172. 172 is way too high for this guy. His ADP right now is 266. 36 years old. There's just too many other viable options, and in the rankings that I saw, they had him ahead of guys like Josh Donaldson, Jake Cronenworth, Jesse Winker. And there's no way I'm taking him over any of those guys. So I don't know. What do you guys think about that? It looks like Aaron saw him ranked at 224, which sounds a little bit better than what I saw. But what do y'all think about Guriel? Where should he go?
He's really only had one good season. In 2019, 298 average and 31 home runs, 104 RBIs. That was his career year for him. Any other year, he hasn't really done a lot. He's kind of maintained a high batting average around 300 his entire career, but you're looking at less than 20 home runs each of those years outside of 2019, and that doesn't really warrant anything higher than a 200 ADP. And I'm fine with him being at around 220 or later.
Not me. To me, he should be going around 300. I mean, when you look at him, he's 36 years old. He doesn't hit 20 home runs. He plays first base. What guys do I like that play first base that go after him? I'll take a Nate Lowe going for Texas. He might can pop 30. I'll take Jesus Aguilar playing for the Marlins. Will pop 30. There's lots of players after 224 that are better than Yuli Guriel. I think he's a good defensive player and he's a good player overall for the Astros. But from a fantasy perspective, he doesn't give you a lot.
Totally agree with that. So let's go into your rankings there, Rich.
Okay, my rankings on the ones that stood out to me that didn't make sense was I'm gonna start with Kenta Maeda. number 35 for CBS. When I look at that ranking, and I think he gets a lot of push-up because he had a great 2020 season. He made 11 starts, 66 innings. He averaged 10.8 Ks per nine, which is great. But then you look at his history. I mean, he had a 4.04 ERA in 2019, a 4.22 in 2017, a 3.81 in 2018. He has this weird contract because apparently his arm was about to fall off when the Dodgers offered him his contract. So the contract reads he makes $3 million a year base, and then everything else is based on his innings pitched, game starts. He's a guy that's being pushed up at number 35. At 35, I'm looking for a more consistent, better pitcher. His arm still could fall off, even though he's got good numbers. I like him, but I think he really belongs down in the 120s, 130 range, nowhere near number 35.
Is that 35 overall?
I believe so. That's what I was looking at.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree. That's crazy. He had a good year with the Dodgers, but 35 overall, there's no way. I'm sorry.
So last year he had a really good year. He probably finished in the top 10 in the Cy Young voting.
Yeah, great.
Because he had a year that good last year. But still, 35 is way too rich for me. There's plenty of other talented pitchers out there that I would wait 2 or 3 rounds to get over Maeda. And like I said, no knock against Maeda, but there's just other more valuable players to me at 35.
Yeah, I think the big standout here is that, like Rich said, I don't know if we can trust those numbers from last year. You know, I know we're discounting a lot of what happened in 2020, but we don't know if those numbers were more based on just the crazy year that 2021 was, or if he really got that big of a bump going from LA to Minnesota. But at this point, until I see it happen again, I'm not expecting a repeat of those numbers from last year. I mean, he has always had a high K per nine, but other than that, there's nothing that I see. You know, his WHIP last year was off the charts compared to his career average, and I just don't see him until he does it again. I don't predict that he would sustain those numbers, and there's no way I'm taking him at 35 overall. That's insane.
My next guy is Starling Marte at number 56. You know, Marte is entering his age 32 season. He's one of those guys that the sum is greater than any one category, even though he's a speed guy. He does a little bit of everything. I'm about to compare him with a player that's on my favorite team that I like, but Dansby Swanson. He's a guy that's good in every category, gives you a little bit in every category, but nothing great in one. The thing I say about Marte is I think the speed could drop a little bit, and then what do you've got? You've got a guy that's a 20 home run guy whose counting stats are probably average, not great, and you've got a good average. He's going to be playing for the Marlins, which is not a great ballpark to hit. I could easily see him not give you top 100 production and maybe fall back and become a 20 home run, 10 stolen base guy, and then he's right around in the range with Austin Meadows or even Ramon Laureano. So what do you guys think? But that's my take on Starling Marte.
I agree. You know, we touched on this in one of our earlier segments. He was my pick for players who aren't going to live up to ADP. So I'm on board with you. I think 56 is way too high for him. When you look at the analytics, his speed is dropping significantly. And then you already said it, you know, once his speed goes, what do you have? He's good across all categories, but at this point in his career, he's not great. And I think too many people are drafting him for what he has done in the past and not what he's going to do in the future. He's always going to be solid for average. You know, he's going to hit upper 280s from a fantasy perspective. And, you know, how many home runs is this guy going to get you? How many stolen bases is this guy going to get you? So those are the two big question marks. And, you know, I agree with you, Rich. 56 is too high for him this year.
I said this about Whit Merrifield in an earlier segment, that speed guys, after they get so old, are no longer speed guys. And this definitely applies to Martay as well. He's in that same category. A lot of times you're paying for what the player's name or what the player has done in the past, and that's fine until they reach probably around the age 32, 33, 34. And then that's when your stats are going to be dropping off, and he fits that category. There's a lot of other players that I would love to take at 56. I would rank him around 80 or so. I think he's a much better value at 80.
So, do you guys think that he's going to be a 2020 guy this year?
I struggle with that. I mean, I really believe his speed. I think the potential is his speed will drop and he becomes a 2010 guy more than I believe that he'd be a 2020 guy.
I think with the Marlins, though, he's probably going to be their number 3 or 4 hitter because they don't have a lot of proven veteran bats in that lineup. So at 3 or 4, he's not going to get a lot of opportunities for stolen bases. He might put together 15 if he's lucky this year.
He's not going to hit. He's not going to hit 3 or 4. He's going to. There's no way he hits 4 with Aguilar and Brian Anderson. He's going to be their 2-hole, which is going to give him more at bats over the year. But I think you really want to consider Miami overall and how aggressive they are. I'm going to take the under on that. I say that he doesn't. I say he doesn't get to 2020 this year.
Yeah, I would probably go that bet as well.
Make that 3. All right, my 2 guys that are too low in CBS rankings for me is Randy Rosarina at number 92 and Walker Buehler at number 38. I think we talked about Rosarina earlier. I mean, he had the greatest postseason ever. Is that what you said, Aaron?
Yes.
When you look at him, he's an exciting player. I think he's going to be a guy that's going to hit 25 to 30 bombs and steal 15 to 20 bases. And score a lot of runs and drive in a lot of RBIs. I like a Rosarina a lot better than I do Sterling Marte. If I'm putting them side by side and he's going, 36 picks later, I think it's a no-brainer.
I agree. Rosarina at 92, like I said, you could steal him in pretty much every CBS draft. People are waiting to draft him at 92. You would have already stolen him by pick 50, I think, if you were paying attention. So, like I said, there's no reason for him to drop to 92. Absolutely none.
Yeah, I'm not as high on a Rosarina as you guys are. More because, as you all know, I'm like a track record guy, and he had a great year last year, a good year last year, great postseason, and I do think that 92 is too low, but I don't think it's as high as he should be as high as you all think. Just because I'm more conservative when it goes to, at that point in the draft, that early in the draft, taking a guy that I'm not really 100% confident what his production is going to be this year. And we talked about it earlier in an earlier podcast. Right now, when you look at out there what's going on, he's going really, really high, and he's going a lot lower. So people don't know what to do with the guy right now. So
but the question is 92 too high?
I think it's too high. I think it's too low. He should be higher up. I think the way you use this, if you're playing a CBS league, he's going to be in the default rankings a lot lower. So if you believe in the player, I think you can take him, say, around pick 70 and get a lot of value, because I'm with Aaron. I believe he should be more closer to the top 50, 55 to 60 range. But
so, yeah, that was my question to Justin. Do you think would you take him?
Well, right now I have right around 50 for the hitters. So overall, that would probably push him. I don't have I just blew up my overall ranking, so I can't give you that. But it would push him to probably somewhere around 80. So like I said, I'm not saying that I disagree with Rich. I'm just saying that he might be right that that's probably a little bit too low, but I wouldn't rank him as high as you all would. That's all I'm saying.
I got you. You think he's probably right around 80 to 90, somewhere in there. So
Yeah, I would say maybe 70s, 80s, around there somewhere.
I get that. My next guy is Walker Buehler. He's ranked 38th on CBS. I think that's way, way too low. I just recently took Walker Buehler in the second round in a 15-team draft. I think I took him 23rd overall. I think when you look at pitchers, I have him, I think, ranked 5th in my personal rankings, and I think most everybody that I know of has him in the first 2 rounds. I'm really not sure how CBS came up with number 38. I think if you look at the postseason, to me, the Dodgers had him as their number 1 going in the postseason. Not Kershaw, it was Walker Buehler. Last year was not a great year for him, but if you look at his past history, he has a track record. If you look at the postseason, they let off with, I feel like they had in their mind Walker Buehler was their number 1.
I agree. I think Buehler is probably the tier 1 or tier 2 of pitchers, and you have to get 1 or 2 of those guys in every draft in order to compete. Because if you don't, you get so far behind in pitching categories, you cannot catch up. Walker Buehler checks all the boxes: high strikeout guy, low whip, low ERA. He has several plus pitches. So there's no reason why Buehler should be falling down to, I guess in that case, that'd be round 4. He'll be gone in every other league way before round 4. Round 2 is a good round for Walker Buehler.
I think you got this one right, Rich. He right now I have him as my 6th overall pitcher. Obviously, when you equate that to overall, there's no way he should be going that low. I got him ahead of guys like Blake Snell, and I got him even ahead of Kershaw. So for this year, so like you said, at 38, if Walker Buehler is still on your board at 38, you should go ahead and grab him because that's crazy.
Absolutely. Tell us about Yahoo, Rich.
Okay. My next ranking is, let me see. I lost my Yahoo. Okay. Liam Hendricks. All right. First off, he has the cool Australian accent. He's behind the big
Are
relief.
you ranking him up or down because of his Australian accent?
So I'm ranking him up for his Australian accent, down because you never should have a closer number 61. I don't care if he gets 40. I don't care if he gets 50 saves next year. There's no way Liam Hendricks should go this high. There's too many great players right around 61 that you can pick that help your team in more categories, whether that's power, speed, or combo, power, speed, counting stats, whether it's a starting pitcher going 61 that you need, like a Lance Lynn. There's no way Liam Hendricks should be rated this high.
Now, here's a question for you, a side question here. So you said closers should not be ranked that high. Josh Hader is being ranked higher than him. Is Josh Hader worth that higher pick?
No. If you look at Josh Hader's, if you look at 2020 for Josh Hader, I'm worried about him because prior to 2020, he was a 2-inning pitcher. For some reason, in 2020, the Brewers only let him go 1 inning at a time. The great thing about Josh Hader, if you look at his 2019-2018 season, was how many innings he gave you and how many Ks that came with those innings. In 2020, he was basically a 1-inning pitcher. So is something changed? But just as an overall philosophy, no, I would not take a relief pitcher that high, even if he was the best relief pitcher in the world.
I just wanted to see if it was Hendricks or whether it was all pitchers, all relief pitchers. So, okay, you've answered my question.
Yeah, I think he's a good player.
I'm stuck on this one. Like I said, if we all know that we've discussed it before in other podcasts, how the value of closers has kind of increased dramatically over the last few years, just because there aren't that many full-time closers anymore. These managers like to use the closer by committee, and it's hard to come by saves. So the way I approach it, like going into this year, is I have 4 guys that I am willing to take high, and those are Chapman, Hendricks, Hader, and Diaz for the Mets. So for me, Hendricks is in that group. 61 is a little steep. I don't know if I would take him that far, but for those top four guys that I named, those are my top four closers, and I would consider them high. But I'm on the fence on this one.
What point do you think that it's time to take a closer? Is it, say, around pick 80? Is that where you feel comfortable? What about you?
To me, I'm waiting on somebody else to take the closer first, right? And I'm hoping that they get pushed back and back and back, and they don't go till around 3 or 4. But we know that's not going to happen. We know somebody in your draft is going to be in love with one of these guys and are going to take them too early, and then the run on closers is going to start, and then you really have to start reassessing your draft of who's left, and how can I formulate my roster to get saves through the rest of this draft. And if I'm at a point to where I think there's going to be a huge run and it's early, and if one of those four guys is available, I will pull the trigger just because I'm that confident in those four guys. But I think a lot of it, Rich, depends on how your draft is playing out. What do you think, Aaron?
So this is my breakdown for closers. Pitchers are much more inconsistent year to year than hitters. I think we've already established that. We've talked about that in a previous segment. When you go to relief pitchers, you take that inconsistency with pitchers and times it by 5 or more, and you'll get the consistency of closers. Closers are so wildly inconsistent from year to year. Look at Edwin Diaz, like you were talking. 2019 was an absolute disaster. Look at the pitchers that were in Colorado over the last few years. Just up and down the board. There's no consistency at all. There's a revolving door in Atlanta. There's a revolving door in San Francisco. There's going to probably be a revolving door in Arizona this year. The Reds have a revolving door. The Cubs with Kimbrel. What's going to happen there? It makes those closers that are like Chapman and a Jensen and maybe even Hendricks a little bit more valuable because you have consistency. You have consistency in an inconsistent category or an inconsistent position, but still, it's still inconsistent. They're injured all the time, and you can't really count on them. So I'm with you, Rick. You don't draft them early. And I think there's a stat out there that the closer with the most saves over the last 5 years, and each year, that closer was not taken in the top 5 of closers. The majority of time, the top closer in each league is drafted much further down the list. There's just closers that come out of nowhere. So that's where I would want to be. I want to maximize positions elsewhere. I want to maximize my offense, get a couple more quality starters, and then I'll take whatever I can get at closers. I'm not going to punt that category. I'm not going to totally forget about it. And depending on how the draft goes, you may have to jump into that pool a little earlier than you would otherwise. You don't want to be the first one in the pool, in my opinion. You want to be one of the last ones in. You want to make sure you get into that pool, but you don't necessarily want to be anywhere close to first.
Totally agree. My next guy I think is too low is Dominic Smith. Yahoo has him ranked 128. The things I like about Dominic Smith is the last 2 years he's really made some strides. He came up, he was a good prospect. He was a 300 batting average prospect. In the last 2 years, he's proven his powers has improved. I think he's a guy that can get you 25 home runs, 100 RBIs. At 128, that's too late. The other thing I really like about Dom Smith, he gives you first base and outfield eligibility. So if I'm looking at Dom Smith, I can either play him at first base, corner infield, or outfield. I love that. I really think he's going probably 30 picks too late. I think he should be probably in the 90 to 100 category, maybe right after maybe a Paul Goldschmidt or Anthony Rizzo. I think he's a good play, especially when I can put him either in outfield. And outfield is such a weak position. I know we haven't talked about it a lot this year, but if you've had any drafts so far, once you get around pick 140 or 150, outfield just drops dramatically. So I think he's a good play that can give you good average, good batting average, good home run power with good RBIs.
I am not necessarily going to agree with you here. And this is why. Last year he was a great pick because he was a deep, deep sleeper. And if you're in a mixed league, he probably wasn't even drafted. In an NL only league, he was drafted really late. He was a great find for those players.
In our league, he wasn't drafted, Aaron. You picked him up on the waiver wires.
Yeah, I had the number one waiver pick, and I picked him up with that number one waiver pick. And that was mainly because the NL adopted the DH last year. It doesn't appear that the National League is going to have the DH this year, and I'm not convinced he's going to get the playing time he needs to be a higher pick than 128. He might be – I'd probably take him a little bit earlier, but I wouldn't count on him being a DH this year. I wouldn't count on DH being in the National League this year, maybe in 2022, but not in 2021. So because of that, I'd probably think 128 is about right.
Yeah, I gotta agree with Aaron on this one. He's gonna bat the bottom of the lineup. We all know that one of the things we like to do is when we're building our lineups is we want to get as many at bats as possible. And they also got some guys on the Mets have some guys on the bench who are decent hitters. And he's a left-handed batter, and when he's going against lefties, they're not going to hesitate to pull him. I have him ranked as my very high as far as my hitters. I won't say the number, but I have him in zero. I have him in the top 15% of zero categories. I just, he did have a good year last year, but I'm not banking on that. And the Mets have made a lot of moves. Adding Lindor in there, it's just pushing him further down the lineup. And I'm going to disagree with you. I think 128 is too high for him.
Thank you, Justin. I love that you and Aaron are against me, but you're both wrong. The thing about Dom Smith, if you look at the Mets lineup, he's going to bat third or fifth. I mean,
no way.
Yeah,
no way.
I guarantee it.
No way.
The other side of that is he's too good a hitter to be on the bench. I mean, you don't put guys that hit 280, 290, 300 on the bench. They're playing every day. Right now, they just signed Amaro to play backup center field to Nemo. He's playing every day. The other part of that argument is the NL will have the DH this year. I guarantee it. Me and Joe Willie guarantee that the
NL is leaning towards no. So let's look at okay, this is a good discussion. Let's look at the Mets lineup right now. We have a pretty good feeling Nemo is going to lead off. Then you got McNeil, Lindor, Conferto, and Alonso. Dominic Smith isn't going to hit ahead of any of those guys.
I think Nemo is going to be pushed back down in the lineup. I think he's a good OBP guy, but I think he's probably batting seventh. I think McNeil's batting 1, Lindor 2. I think 3 is probably going to be Dom Smith. 4 is going to be Alonso. I mean, I'm sorry, Conforto might be 3. I mean, Conforto will be 3. Alonso will be 4. Dom Smith will be 5. J.D. Davis will be 6. And then 7th will be your man Nemo. That's my take.
I'm going to go with Dominic Smith is going to bat by the end of this year, when we look at where he batted, he's going to be 6 or low or more than he's going to be in the top 4.
Save the tape, Aaron. Save the tape.
Save it. We'll go back. We should be compiling a list of all of our arguments. We can compare them at the end.
All right. this will be duly recorded. I like Dominic Smith's bat. I absolutely do. I think he's a great addition to the Mets lineup. I think he's a great cog of that Mets lineup. But consistency for a bat is going to be a struggle. The fact that Robinson Cano is suspended this year does help him because that makes McNeil their primary second baseman. J.D. Davis is going to be their primary third baseman, and then Dominic Smith is probably going to be their primary left fielder. But I know they're still looking for outfielders too. They did sign Almora, what you mentioned earlier, and I'm not sure they're finished with signing players. So,
well, they also got Jose Martinez. Don't forget about him. He's had a few really, really good years.
oh yes, I didn't even think about Jose Martinez. And that's another thing with the Mets, with Dominic Smith in particular. What happens, seventh inning, they're leading by 4 or 5 runs. They're going to pull Smith for a defensive replacement, or they may even do that if they're leading by a run or two. Pull him and put Almora in the outfield and bring in Dominic Smith. So that's going to be in a bat or two a game that he might not be getting. So I don't know whether you can bank on more than 500 at bats for the entire season. That is if he stays healthy. He's going to have to do a lot with those limited at bats.
You make a good point about the defensive replacement, but I still believe the NL ultimately is going to decide to have the DH this year. I think there's still some negotiations being done, and I like Dom Smith a little bit better than both of you. So we will see.
My focus on this week, I'm going to post a new rant on our website about the issues with MLB and their players union. That's a whole rant for another topic, so I'm going to put that on our website, and you guys can read that at your leisure. It's good at rant topics. Let's continue on. ESPN.
Okay, I'm gonna make it quick. I mean, Max Kepler at 82, good player, plays for Minnesota, doesn't hit for average, doesn't have a lot of speed, great power guy. I just think he's way too high. He should be down probably in the 150, 160. And then Ketel Marte, second base for Arizona, number 55. No way. He had the one great year where he hit 30 home runs. Even though he's noted for having great speed, he's never stolen, even in the minor leagues, more than like 15 bags. I'm not a big Ketel Marte guy. He's a good average guy, but, I mean, at 55, you're looking for somebody who's going to hit 25, 30 home runs. You're looking for somebody who's going to get you 10, 20, 30 stolen bases. I have Ketel Marte, pulling out something more along the lines of 15 homers and maybe 8 steals. And to me, that's not a 55 pick. Same with Kepler. I think he's a 230, 240 hitter with, high 20s home runs, but he's not an 82nd pick. I can get that same guy later in the draft. All right, if you even wait to like 200 and take A.J. Pollock, who I think is a better player.
As far as these two, yeah, Max Kepler is way, 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 way too high. And I would he's like 150 to me. He's ranked around ADP at 150. Marte is still also a little too high. I'd probably have him around 80. He's had one good year. Marte did. He had a really impressive 2019. But every other year since then, he's been at middle of the road at best. So unless you have a really strong feeling that 2021 is going to be a lot like 2019, then I would push him back a few rounds. And Kepler, I'd push back a lot more. He's not going to help you in batting average. He might get you 30 home runs. I think it's a little doubtful he makes it back to the 30 home run plateau. But yeah, I'd be drafting him around 140, 150.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not going to talk about Marte too much, but Kepler at 82 to me is insane. For a guy that's absolutely going to he's not only going to not help you in batting average, he's going to kill you in batting average. High 20 home run guy. A few podcasts ago, we called this out. You can get this exact same player right now that's going around around 30, and that's Hunter Renfroe. So it's crazy. There's no way I'm taking. There's too many other guys around pick 82 that can get you the same home runs and RBIs, and also help you in stolen bases and not kill you in average. So it's too high.
Ketel Marte is the one guy that I don't understand how or why, but consistently, if you look around, even his ADP is around there. Why is Ketel Marte the 55, even 60th ranked player? I don't know how this guy is not ranked in the 100s to 130 range.
I don't either.
He's one of the guys that feels like he's overranked every year. I don't know why. I don't know what people are looking at.
Well, he was a good prospect, and he did have a really phenomenal 2019, and he just hasn't done anything since.
Or before.
The ballpark is a little hitter friendly, but then again, we talked about how tough the NL West pitching is going to be this year, and that has to be a factor here as well.
And my guys that are too low are two pitchers. I think Pablo Lopez, number 180, and Ian Anderson, number 191. I think that's way too low. They're both young guys. I really think Pablo Lopez, he's going around pick 130 in ADP. I like him a lot. He's a guy that took a step up in 2020. And his 2019 was not that bad when you look deep into the numbers. He's a high K guy. He's playing for that Marlins team. I think he could be a guy that overperforms and kind of moves up and that upper tier pitchers. Same with Ian Anderson. Ian Anderson pitches up and down, and he has that 12-6 curveball. I really like Ian Anderson this year. I think both these players are ranked way too low. I would put them at least 60 picks higher. And if I can get them, at pick 150, I'm taking them back to back all day long.
Talk about Lopez. He really came into his own last year. The one concern he had never been really a high K per 9 guy. Last year he started mixing up his pitches a little bit more and is getting there. But he had the low ERA. Decent whip, and he's still young. A lot of times when you're looking at starting pitchers, one of the keys is how do they give a lot of what's their ground ball percentage versus their fly ball percentage. He's got a really good ground ball percentage. So when you have those kind of pitchers, it's going to lead a lot of outs and less runs. And last year it all came together for him. I agree. 180 for him is it's way too low.
Pablo Lopez, I like the Marlins. I like their pitching staff. It's young. It has a lot of potential. I was surprised they traded Yamamoto. But like I said, Pablo Lopez has a lot of upside there. And I like him for a sleeper in the strikeout category. So I would definitely take him in probably around 120 or so. Ian Anderson, if he pitches this year like he did last year, granted it was a very limited time frame last year, but if he's able to pitch in 2021 like he did in 2020, he could be a second tier pitcher, tier 2 pitcher come 2022. He's that dynamic. If I had to bank on a pitcher being drafted after 100, I would bank on Ian Anderson. He is dynamic. He has almost a 30% K rate. That's great for a rookie. And a lot of times you have like the Chris Paddock types who comes out, makes a big splash that rookie year, and then regresses in the sophomore season. It could happen to Ian Anderson, but with his underlying skills, I don't think it will. I would like for him to reduce his walks a little bit, but if his current trajectory, he'll be a round 3 or 4 pick next year if he keeps this up. So I really like Ian Anderson this year, and definitely above pick 191.
With Anderson, he was kind of one of those guys that was just clumped into the Braves minor leaguers. They had just a whole stable of pitchers in their minor leaguers. It's like hard to keep track of. Like which one of these guys, they're going to unload some of these guys. How do you sort all this out? Because they had so many high end prospects. Ian Anderson has been a high caliber prospect throughout. He's done really well in the minors. He had a great year last year. There's no indication that would fall off. I think the only question is, like Aaron said, is does he have does he experience some kind of sophomore slump? With these NL hitters getting used to him. But yeah, Rich, I think you're spot on with both these. These are both ranked too low, and I have both of them higher on my overall list.
All right, enough of Rich's picks. He had to overdo it. We were supposed to pick 2 per site, and he couldn't help himself but do more than that. He's always an overachiever.
Rich the overachiever / bad draft proposer, bad trade proposer.
That's okay. I own it.
All right. So there were many options I could have done for CBS, like we talked about, but the 2 I think were a little most egregious was the one most egregious was Manny Machado at 75. I saw that. I'm like, are you kidding me? I had to go look to see where Machado was. I was like, why isn't he in the top 20? But at 75, if you're in a CBS draft and you can get him, if you're at pick 50 and he's available, you have to jump all over that. There's no reason in the world he should be going at 75. Like I said, he's a second-round pick in pretty much every format, in my opinion. Charlie Morton at number 40, I think that's a little too high. He is getting a little long on the tooth, and he's playing for a new team. I don't think there's going to be a DH this year that will help him a little bit. But like I said, 41 is a little too high. Rich for my blood. There's a lot of other pitchers I'd rather have there at round 3 than Charlie Morton. He has a good chance of getting a lot of strikeouts, but I think he's more of a round 6 or so type pitcher for me. What do you think, Rich, since Morton's your guy?
Yeah, no, I do like Charlie Morton. I'm looking for a bounce back, but I totally agree. I think he's probably around pick 110 to 120. I have him later than you do. I think he's going to, I'm not sure he's a top 30 pitcher. He might be right around 31, 32, 33 for me. But he's not the number 41 overall player. At that rank, there's lots of players I like better. I totally agree with Machado. He should be second, third round at most type player. He's one of the best players in the game. He should be in the first 3 rounds, no doubt.
Yeah, the Machado, that's a real head scratcher. How do you justify ranking him down that far? I mean, this is a guy who's going to be in the top 15 percentile in 4 of the 5 standard roto categories. I have him as my 11th overall hitter. To put him, and it's not like third base is stacked either.
No,
they might have a better case if it was if he was a shortstop, a position that is really, really deep, which third really isn't that deep in my opinion. That's insane. 75 is way too low, way too low for him.
Yeah, third base. You're exactly right. It's not very deep.
And we talked about the Padres lineup in earlier segments. They're going to have a really stacked lineup this year, and Machado is going to be in the middle of that lineup and has a lot of RBI opportunities, a lot of opportunities to score runs. So any chance you have to get him, I'd take it. Let's move on. to Yahoo. So Tatis I have at number 14. But where I'll ultimately see him being ranked is not very far from 14. But considering it's top 5 versus number 14, that's pretty significant. Tatis is one of the top 5 players. We've talked about this in previous segments. And to list him at 14, if you can get him in the second round and pair him up with like a Juan Soto or something like that, you have a great start to your fantasy league. But like I said, 14 for Tatis is way too low. Kris Bryant at number 34. He's been a topic of a lot of our conversations, it seems like. But I have him around pick 80, and 34 is a little too rich for my blood. We've beat the Kris Bryant horse to death, I think. But I think he's not worth a third-round pick to me. He's more around pick 80.
Are you saying they have him ranked 34th overall?
Yeah.
Oh man, let me start with Tatis. So you all know that is my guy. I'm a huge Tatis fan, and to suggest that he should be going 14th overall is freaking insane. And I'd like to see. I'm not looking at it right now, but I'd like to see who they have ranked ahead of him, because to me that's absolutely asinine, especially if you want to talk about dynasty league. If you're talking about a dynasty league, you're talking about the number 1 overall pick. The discussion is pretty much going to be between Acuna, Tatis, and Soto. So 14 is just, it's kind of insulting. But Kris Bryant 34 overall.
Yeah.
I don't get it. I don't get it at all. We like you said, I don't want to beat it to death because we've talked about it in another podcast, but there is no way I would consider Bryant that high. I mean, if I look at my personal hitter rankings, where is he at? I don't even have him in the top 50 of my hitters, let alone 34 overall. So, Rich, what are your thoughts?
Oh, totally agree. I mean, Kris Bryant's ranked too high. He's got too much of an injury history. I do like the player. I do think he can be a good pick, but I'm probably around 90, pick 90 to maybe 120 for Kris Bryant. And Tatis, he's top 5 player easily. So I'm 100% with you on both those. 2 thumbs up for me.
Wow. I think it's the first time we've had this. Nice.
Is that the first time we've both agreed with?
I think so.
It's just too fun to argue with you, Aaron.
All right, let's go. Well, here's your chance. Here's my ESPN picks. They have Strasberg at 114 and Joey Gallo at 94. So the problem with Strasberg is this. He had a really bad and almost forgettable 2020. He did not pitch well. He got hurt early, and because of that, because he didn't make a difference in 2020, a lot of people are going to forget about him and they're going to drop him down into the teens. But what you got to remember is in 2019, he had one of the best pitching performances of any pitcher in the postseason. They won the World Series. He pitched phenomenally in the World Series. And what that does to a pitcher, all those extra innings in 2019 really took its toll, and you saw that in 2020. And when we were planning a 2020 draft, I was staying away from Strasburg at all costs because I knew that there's a high probability that he could be injured because of the extra workload in 2019. Well, 2020 was pretty much a wash, so his arm should be good, ready to roll for 2021, and I think he will resume more of that 2019 stats. I wouldn't necessarily draft him like in the second round like he was going in 2020 or 2019, but I think around 70 to 75 would be much, much closer to what he deserves. And then Joey Gallo at 94. He's been one of those roller coaster players. 2019, he broke out, had a phenomenal year. He crushed 40 home runs. But since then, it's just been downhill from there. He strikes out a ton. In 2019, it was an injury season for him. He struck out almost 50% of. He struck out more than 40% of his at bats. It's way too much. He's always been known for strikeouts, but it's not getting any better. It's getting worse. And I would not be drafting somebody like that around 94. I would almost double that, 180.
Okay, I'm going to start with Steven Strasberg. Okay, Aaron, are you crazy? Steven Strasberg had carpal tunnel syndrome. He had surgery. All right, what happens when you have carpal tunnel syndrome? Justin, you're a guitar player. Can you play the guitar with carpal tunnel syndrome?
I don't know. I've never had it.
Okay, you can't. How can you, when a pitcher's hands are some of their most important instrument, you got to be able to grip the ball, be able to put different types of pressure on the ball at different pressure points. So how do you even know Steven Strasberg can come back from that? In my mind, he's off the board. I'm not taking him at any pick. Maybe if he was picked 200, I would take him. But that is too big of an unknown. And I have had carpal tunnel before, and it's difficult. I don't know how you would be able to grip a baseball and throw it if you had that.
Well, I'm not saying you draft him in round 2 or 3 like you were doing before, but round pick 70, 75, that's around, I don't know, round 6 or so. Well, I think that would be a reasonable expectation.
For me, I'm out. I would take a Pablo Lopez and Ian Anderson. I would take a Charlie Morton ahead of Steven Strasberg at this point because I do think it's a big unknown with the carpal tunnel syndrome. When he comes back to spring training, he shows he can throw and he shows he can do it consistently, then I might change my mind. But I'm out on Steven Strasberg.
All right. What do you think about Gallo?
Well, for me, if you're talking about Gallo, here's my thought. Joey Gallo is a big guy. How big is he? What is he, about 240, 250?
Yeah, something like that.
All right. He cannot hit his weight as far as batting average goes. I think if you look at his history, he has a lot of seasons where he hits 208, 210. That kills your fantasy team. Yes, he has his great upside. He could potentially hit 50 home runs. But for whatever reason, maybe it's because of the batting average, a lot of time his playing time gets pushed down. For me, I'm out on Joey Gallo at number 94. I'm out on Joey Gallo completely. I do think he has great power, but if you look at his counting stats, there's lots of players that have better counting stats. He doesn't give you speed, and he kills your batting average. Justin, back me up on this.
No, I agree. We talked about players killing your batting average, and this may be the biggest batting average killer in all of baseball. If I look at his ADP, right now it's right around 100. But so the 94 already suggests that you're right, it's too high. But I wouldn't even draft him that high. With Strasburg, I'm on the fence, man. He had so much promise in 2019. Most innings ever he had ever pitched. He's always been a high K per nine guy, and I really wasn't. I was with Aaron on this one. I wasn't really putting that much thought into his carpal tunnel, because he had surgery on it. But now you got me rethinking it. So I'm gonna have to do a little more homework there on that and what effects could have, because if it's gonna drop his spin rate way down, then we might have a problem. I don't know. I'm glad you pointed that out, Rich, because that gives me something to look into now.
From the reports that I've read, he's healthy and is going to be ready for spring training. But you're right. I think spring training is a good wait and see for him. I would be paying especially close attention to him, like during the spring training games, and see if he has any lingering effects because of that. So that's one of those players to look close for during spring training.
Our team still reporting next week to spring training? Is that still on?
That's still on.
Okay, we'll find out soon.
All right. So thank you, everyone, for listening. to our segment today for the BS rankings for CBS, Yahoo, and ESPN. We have a lot of other great segments you can listen to. Download, check us out on our website at fantasyknuckleballers.com. Twitter handle at @knuckleballers, or email us at mvp@fantasyknuckleballers.com. Thank you for listening.